This video is being made to explain the vertical saccades extra credit opportunity that we have at the end of the semester. I want to give you a little bit of background about why we're doing this. Recently there's been some interest in early diagnosis of TBI, and so one of the tests that is used to assess whether a patient may have TBI is called the King-Devitt test. In this King-Devitt test, the person starts reading left to right, the numbers out loud, and they're timed on this test. There have been very few studies that have looked at whether vertical saccades are affected in MTBI, and with the King-Devitt test, we don't really have vertical saccades, just the return sweep on this test. There is another test called the developmental eye movements test, which actually does measure vertical saccades, but the adult version actually has these 2-digit numbers rather than 1-digit numbers, and it takes longer to say them. Additionally, on this DEM test, there is actually an equal amount of spacing in between the numbers as you go top to bottom or bottom to top, and so it doesn't test saccades. It tests saccades, but it tests what's called the automaticity of the saccades, meaning the amplitude between each of these numbers of the movement that needs to be made is the same. So to try to figure out whether we could subjectively assess vertical saccades, and if it's defective, it could mean an injury or neurodegeneration, I thought it would be a good idea to create a vertical saccades test that is not predictable. And so that's what we're going to have you do. So the purpose of doing this study is to describe the performance of adults, you guys, on a subjective vertical eye movements test. We're going to compare the results on the subjective eye movements test between those of you who have and have not sustained a head injury in your past. And we're also going to examine the variability of these results when the test is done by multiple people. And this often happens in clinical practice. Different people will be performing the same test, so we'd like to know whether they could get similar results. So you will be asked to complete 2 surveys on Google Forms. The email for those links, containing those links, has already been sent to you. During your lab time for the week after Thanksgiving break, we're going to collect this data. So you'll do your normal lab first, and then if you choose to stay for this extra credit opportunity, we'll do it right after that lab. I'm going to have you work in groups of 3s because I think that we'll be able to collect the data most quickly if we do it in groups of 3s. If it doesn't work out with groups of 3s, we'll figure that out as we go. Each person is going to be asked to administer, meaning you be the doctor, the complete test to both of the other students in the group. And the individual test is not going to take, or shouldn't take, longer than about 5 minutes for each person to complete. And each person must complete all of the cards that are on the test booklet. You're going to record your data for your subject on the Google spreadsheet. I will give you that link later. The data, I want you to be aware, is not going to be private because everybody's going to be adding data to the same spreadsheet, and I have to know who did what data because I have to be able to match and compare the data on a given person when the test was done by 2 different people. So I don't think this should bother you that other people see your data because we really don't know what the normal data is for these tests. But if this bothers you that other people will see your data, then the only solution to this is that you can choose not to participate. I would ask you, though, that as you're adding the data in for the subjects that you collect, please refrain from looking around at the other data just because some people may be kind of sensitive about this. So let me show you quickly what this vertical saccades test is. It's going to come in a booklet like this that will either be bound or it will have a ring that holds all of the sheets together. The first sheet is the demonstration card, and what we're going to have subjects do is start with the bottom leftmost number and read the numbers out loud as accurately as possible, going from bottom to top. So on this first line, they would read 7, 2, 5, 3, 8, 9. Once they read number 9, the subject should then saccade down to the very bottom of the card to the next line over and start reading from here upwards. So they would go 7, 2, 5, 3, 8, 9, 1, 6, 3, 4, 6, 8, 3, 3, 2, etc. All right. This card is not timed, but everyone should go through the card so their visual system and their mouth kind of knows what to do as part of the test. So have everybody complete the demonstration card. The next card is labeled Test 1, and you'll notice that the lines are a little bit different on this card, so the test theoretically is a little bit harder than the other one, but the concept is the same. When you start the timer, the patient is going to start down here in the leftmost corner, read the numbers out loud going up. When they get to the top number, they're to make a saccade back down and start down here and read the next vertical line of numbers going up. You're going to time them all the way across the card. So set up the timer feature on your smartphone. The subject again starts to read the card when you tell them to start, and at the same time you have to hit the start button on your timer. Be sure to put your hand in a position so that as soon as they read this last number up here on the top right, that you hit the stop button on your timer, and you're going to record the time it took them to completely read the card on the Google spreadsheet. During this testing, I also want you to count how many errors they make. And so your instructions as a subject is read the card as quickly as you can, but try hard not to make any errors. All right, and if they make errors, just keep track of them. I'm going to put an answer sheet on the back of each set of tests so that you don't, as the timer, have to look at the card with them. You can just refer to the card in your on the back of the sheets while you are recording the time. So again, count the errors made when reading that card and record that number also. Next, you're going to show test number 2. Now in test number 2, the task is the same, but all of the lines have been removed. Okay, but again, they're going to start at the bottom left, and the last number they should read should be at the top right. And you're going to time this one separately from the first card, and you record both the time and the number of errors made for that as well. And then finally, we have test card number 3, which unfortunately has a typo on it and says test number 2. But you can tell that this card is different because the letters, or excuse me, the numbers are squished together more closely in the horizontal dimension. But the task is the same. You're going to time them as well as count the number of errors that they make as the patient starts with number 3 here on the bottom left and finishes up with the number on the top right. Once the third test is completed and you've recorded those answers, then you are done. I strongly suggest that you have one patient or subject do all 4 cards and then switch to a different subject. And the reason for doing this is to kind of help avoid memorizing the numbers. So maybe it would be a good idea for that second person who is kind of waiting around for the test to be done not to stand near while the test is being performed so they don't memorize the numbers. And then if you, as the doctor, administer the test twice, first to one subject and then to the other subject, then step away from the test while the next person acts as the doctor so that you don't hear those numbers repetitively and memorize the numbers. I think it would be kind of hard to do, but just to kind of avoid that, step away from the test when you're not either being the subject or the doctor. Again, I want to remind everyone must do the demo card so that you have practice with what to do with your eyes, even if you think you understand the test. And we need everyone to do the demo card for consistency in how the data is collected. I really appreciate you participating.